this esteemed panel. Does that work? Does that work, guys? Yes, perfect. So yes, my name is Huda, and I was recently elected onto the NEC, and I'm also from Coventry, and I say that everywhere I go now because now we're the city of culture, I feel like I could drop that and be impressive. So yes, and one of the reasons, I mean, this year, these past couple of years in the Labour Party have been incredibly difficult, but they've also been incredibly inspiring, and I think that this summer, we, as toxic as it got, I think it also showcased that the membership, and at 600,000 now, and growing and on course to be 1 million, and definitely the largest in Western Europe, is on side, and I think is moving towards understanding that the Palestinian struggle is integral to our struggle within the Labour movement. Part of the reason for that is, as myself, I think a lot of other people in this room and across the country grew up understanding the struggle that the Palestinian people face. I remember being incredibly young and going to the mosque and there being a collection and asking, what does this mean, and it being introduced to me. But I also think, particularly when we're looking at ethnic minority communities and ethnic minority organising, anti-racism organising in general, there has been that internationalism that I think is incredibly important, and I feel as though has been under attack. And the reason I say that is because I feel that the only way in which regressive forces can continue to try and destabilise our movement and our struggle is by erasing the history and erasing where we're at. And I think that when we look at what has been incredible this year, particularly this summer as well, is that all of a sudden there's a raising of consciousness. And I think that this has been happening pretty much since like 2014 was the first time I pretty much saw it. You can't trust what you see or what you read anymore, but social media has kept us in contact. And it's meant that when, the Israeli state or any kind of colonial force or aggressive force in the world says that something is going on, all you have to do is load Twitter or load Facebook and you see exactly what's going on. And I think that people are able to communicate a lot better, and that interconnectivity that the rise in social media and the rise in being in technology in general has connected us as a movement and made us much more global and made us able to fight back a lot more cohesively, and I think we need to be building on that. But I think it also raises the point of decolonising and what that means in today's context. Because I think that when we look at the decolonising movement, I first came into contact with that in education, with, why is my curriculum white, how can we make our curriculum more reflective? But I think it's important to see that this is a lifelong, when you're looking all the way at the bottom of education, all the way to the top into higher education, but also societally, we're talking about organisations and institutions. How can we decolonise them so that we can shift the power balance and we can begin to include the wider range of voices that will mean that we place central to everything the people at the heart of struggle, that we place central to everything, the Palestinian people and their cause. And I think that when we're seeing that rise in consciousness and we're seeing all the campaigns that are going on, I think principal in that BDS, I think that before that, and also throughout that, we have to be saying, how are we educating people? How are we driving education around Palestine? And how are we going out and spreading the word around it? And I think that this summer particularly, as awful as it was, I think I saw so many more people educated through it, so many more people willing to take up the mantle and willing to fight for what they saw to be right, to see what they saw to be a human rights issue, which is what it is, it's a human rights issue. And I think when it's brought back to that, and people are educated on that, and people are educated on the history of that, then I think all of a sudden you see a lot more, you see us collectivise and you see us organise a lot more effectively. And I think that, again, that was showcased at this conference. When we had, as difficult of a summer that we had, it isn't by accident that at this conference we passed a motion, and unequivocally saying that we want an end to the arms sale, that we want to fund UNRWA, that we want to, that we stand for and that we're listening to the Palestinian people. And that was unanimous on conference floor. And that's why I say that, and I've consistently said the membership is with us, and the membership is with us because we're a wider membership now. We reflect more people now because we've grown. And that's why I think the democratising project of the Labour Party is also incredibly important, because we have this massive drive of people coming into the party, and now it's time that the structures are made a lot more accessible to them, so that they can get more involved and they can be encouraged to become engaged. And we can see from a local all the way up to a national level, sort of the leadership of the party in every single tier reflective. And also I think that once we move away from the kind of functioning, because I've only been to like one NEC meeting so far, and it struck me just how incredibly centralised everything is. and how everything has been decided, is being decided by a group of people. A lot of things that should be to the purview of regional actors, and a lot of things that should be to the purview of members as well. So I think that democratising and moving forward, and meaning that everybody who is a Labour Party member and anybody who is in the Labour movement has a much bigger stake in the political direction and the outcome of our party, will mean that we have, that we will have a much more pro-Palestinian party. I mean, we're halfway there, we have the most pro-Palestinian leader, so I think it's only moving in that direction. I think that part and parcel, I think when we're looking at how strategies in which we can fight at a much more localised level, I think we have to look at what has worked. I think we're not starting from ground zero here, and I think that's what's been important. I think also that's what's been showcased. I think when we look at the fact that within the Labour movement, there is, if from the late to even early 20th century, you've had trade unionists, you've had party members, you've had forces within our society, within Britain, who were standing up and who were doing something about it. And I think also the reason why, and actually this was a question I got quite a lot this year, was like, why should we care? Why should we in Britain care? What does this have to do with us? And it's like, well, if you understand the history of it, then you understand that it was you guys, that did this and essentially precipitated this. So it is our responsibility to burden this and to change it. And I think part and parcel in this has to be fighting the liberalisation of anti-racism in general, this idea of we can exist in pockets, we're doing okay, we've got this post-racial society, even though that in and of itself isn't true, and everyone else, doesn't really matter, that's nothing to do with us. I think you'll find that domestic politics is inextricably tied to international politics, and if you see them as separate, all you're doing is being complicit in the oppression of people and being complicit in this government's actions when they are oppressing people. So I think that when we're talking about how we fight racism and looking back at how we've done it, it's that collectivism and that understanding that all of our history and all of our struggles are combined, and it's only when we're coming together and we're fighting as a unit, and that we will be fighting oppressive structures that we ourselves are under. When we look at, for instance, the trade union movement, which I said has stood shoulder to shoulder in apartheid in South Africa, but also with Palestine and also with various other struggles across the world. I think it is within the context of obviously the colour bar, and obviously 1969 when the TUC had turned around and said that they wanted to uphold. They didn't want the government to pass anti-discrimination laws. You had all of these incredibly regressive, racist elements, and it was up to us to take up that mantle and to do something about it. And it's that relinquishing control from this idea of institutions and bringing the agency back and the power back onto people and saying that it is our responsibility and that we can do it, that I think that we get somewhere. And I think that builds into the internationalist element as well, because I think that we don't just stand alone here in Britain, across Europe, across the West, and most certainly across the rest of the world. We have comrades that are also going to fight with us, and that is again how we win. So when we sort of look at, and I think part and parcel, I keep saying part and parcel, I apologise, I've said it like 7 times now, but I think an important vehicle in this as well will be young people. I think that one thing that I've seen that's quite heartening is sort of looking at the Palestinian societies in universities and on campuses and how absolutely instrumental they have been in educating people. At my university, we had a BDS campaign, but it wasn't just BDS in terms of, it was an academic boycott. So, and I went to SOAS, and we have a whole department on Israeli studies. And that department was with us, and we had the Jewish Society as well. They were with us. It was a thing of we won that argument. And I think that we won that argument because people, that Palestinian society, and people were coming and they were talking and they were having those discussions, they were having that dialogue, and they were having it in a way that at that point wasn't toxic and the discourse wasn't toxic. And I think part of that, again, was about the fact that at SOAS, the consciousness was there. So I think it's about raising the consciousness everywhere we go about the very basics of this struggle and the history of this struggle, and then moving forward and having a discussion on those grounds rather than letting certain framings, I think, completely derail the discussion. So I think that young people, I'm completely, everywhere that I've gone and that I've seen young people organising on the cause of Palestine, it has been incredibly heartening. And so I think that there definitely is movement there. And I think that that is something that we have to ensure that everything matches up to and that we move forward with. And I think that it also links into what's happening in the Labour Party and how that movement is happening, so that all of these various different actors and campaign groups are finally on board and are able to move towards fighting for winning ground. So I think that yeah, so I think I'll sort of end it on that note and sort of say that that collectivism and that internationalism and what we have done so far and showcased this summer, as like I said, as awful as it was, I think it was really actually quite inspiring to see so many people come together and so many people organise collectively for a struggle that has had everything thrown at it and continues to have the weight of everything thrown at it. But we come out stronger, and I think that movements are changing, and I think we're getting there. And of course, you know, central to all of this is fighting for people's human rights, and that has to we have to come together around that. So thank you.